What are the obligations of the parties? This is the most challenging part, okay, and consideration, because people always struggle with identifying what are the parties supposed to do. Sometimes money part is specified, but for what the money is to be given is not clear. Sometimes responsibility is written in a very general way. Like if I say that I am appointing X as my marketing agent to promote my product all over the territory of India, and I will pay him based on, and I will pay him 30,000 per month, suppose. Okay. Now this is a marketing contract or marketing agency contract. Now the templates you get on the internet, the reason that you can't always rely on them is because this agreement will fail because it is an agreement, but commercially there's a high chance this will fail because the obligation is not clearly defined and a fixed sum is already being paid, which is why you will start getting specific about it. You will say how much will you market, what is the activity that you will undertake to market, like will you send emails or will you put posters, will you set up distribution outlets, what will you do, then how will you be paid? So how is it related to the commercial outcome a party wants? If I want my marketing to impact sales, I can either measure the effect on sales and give a commission, or I can say that for every outlet this is what you will be produced, you will be paid. Or if I identify that, yeah, so these are the two ones. So a modified version could be that you have 10 distribution outlets or 100, and every outlet is where the sale will happen. So based on the sales from each outlet you will get commission. Now, why is this happening? Now, this is a detail that ideally the parties had to figure it out. But as a person who's drafting a contract, you will ask this because there are many situations where people don't think this through. And if they actually thought this through, it will actually give them a more powerful way. It will make their commercial outcome succeed. And see, blaming it on the businessman doesn't always work because they will expect this from you and they will come to you for more work if you are able to give them inputs that make a deal successful. So it's not about whether it's your fault, but it's about whether you can add further value. That's why obligations and consideration is very important. Now let's look at a shareholders agreement or a share subscription agreement. There the obligation is to invest and then get the shares issued by the company. That's the clear obligation, right? So share subscription agreement gets complete when the money is put in and the shares are issued. But the shareholders agreement starts from the point the shares are issued and governs the end until the shares are sold, until the investor exits. So there are multiple clauses that are actually part of the obligations and the mechanism, like all the clauses which talk about meetings, governing rights, governance rights, reserved matters, exit related rights. These are all part of literally the operational clauses. So some agreements will have huge chunks of operational clauses. These we are calling obligations and related clauses as operational clauses. There is a whole module, operative clauses of a contract. So we've called these to be obligations and payment, representations, warranties and covenants, conditions precedent. I just explained what conditions precedent are. Now, one related concept to conditions precedent and effective date is completion or closing date. So when all the conditions precedent are satisfied, what will happen is something called a completion or a closing date, or a date where the contract becomes effective and the obligations are effective for both parties. And there you have to always define a mechanism that if all these, firstly, if there are 10 things to do, so, and the other side does these 10. Now, somebody from that side, maybe its company secretary, should tell us that these 10 agreements, these 10 things have been done. Maybe the board can confirm that. So that's a mechanism aspect. Now you can define this mechanism in a clear way. So this is called like conditions precedent satisfaction notice. Okay, it's called a notice. Why? Because the company secretary can issue this notice to you saying that all these conditions precedent in this agreement have been satisfied. That's done. Now, what does that mean? That means that now we can move and actually perform our obligations. You can prescribe a mechanism for it. You can say it will happen within 7 days of completion of conditions precedent at a time that the parties decide to do so. Or you can say it can happen within 3 days or on the third day itself from the day of
conditions precedent being satisfied, you are free. So now when you're looking at a clause, always identify how many days is it happening in, when is it happening,